Before we begin, we need to take care of a little housekeeping. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended for solicitation, sale, or purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. The term personal pension refers to a marketing name designed to educate future retirees and retirees about the economic principles behind creating their own pension-like income. The term personal pension is not intended to be confused with a defined benefit pension plan offered by an employer or by a government entity. Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where it's all about helping you complete your financial journey to retirement. Discover time-tested strategies and get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Break away from the herd and go for the retirement you dream of. And now, here's your host, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
All right, fantastic introduction. I think that is my favorite word. I guess it is the one that we hear on the podcast more often than not for me is fantastic. So fantastic to also be joined by Marc Miller.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, so Marc is actually out of the office today. He's traveling on safari in Southern California.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. My life in my own hands, driving on the freeway.
Yeah, both hands on the freeway the whole time. Got it. Hey, so this is Personal Pension Radio, the podcast that is all about helping you build the right balance between your retirement savings so that you can actually keep your lifestyle when you head into retirement. We're broadcasting live from the 95th floor of the Personal Pension Radio Tower here in beautiful South Corona, California. We're sorry for those who are buried under snow and ice to the east and north of us, but we are surviving here in the sunny Southern California. Marc, tell us in your ever so humble opinion, the co-host, when you think of Personal Pension Radio, what comes to mind? What are we talking about?
Well, Kraig, you know that, first and foremost, people are worried about retirement. They really are. And I think of us as a place where people can come and really learn the right way to save for retirement, to maximize their income, and to maintain lifestyle in retirement. And we're a good place to come, learn, get educated, learn about the risks that you're faced with while you're accumulating assets, and learn the proper way for distribution techniques so you can have that term that we use, maximum enjoyment in retirement.
That is an excellent way to put it. I'm glad you brought that up. The part that gets lost for me, that I think gets lost personally in all of the financial messages out there, whether it's financial entertainers like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman or Jim Cramer on the news, wherever it might be, that the answer to retirement is all about accumulation. It's about how much money you have saved. And when you and I both know that when we get to retirement, it is not about so much the amount of money we have saved, but how much enjoyment, how much lifestyle can we draw from those assets safely without running out of money?
No, you're exactly right. And it is really what people are worried about. It's as you start. In fact, I think we're going to share an article today about that. But it's what people are worried about. They want to be able to have enough income in retirement. It's what they're thinking about every day. And honestly, people don't know how to get there. They just don't. Well, they want to get there, but they don't know how to.
Right. It's hard to get there when the roadmap that has been laid out by the financial industry is missing some of the most important parts of the directions.
And for those of us who have small children, which may be a lot of us, if you've ever had to put together a toy, it can be very frustrating when some of the pieces are missing or the instructions are missing.
Absolutely. I had to do that today with a piece of computer equipment that could not for the life of me find any instructions with this thing. And it just trying to actually finish the installation without having all of the instructions. And the same goes for our retirement plan. If we've only been given one part of the directions, and we talked about this in our last 2 episodes, using the mountain climbing analogy, if we've only been given the instructions to climb the mountain and we've not ever been prepared for coming down the mountain, that's going to be a difficult journey.
Yeah, and especially if we believe that, when we climb something or go up something, logically, we use a set of different muscles as we're going up as we do coming down.
Yeah.
Everything applies metaphorically in our retirement life.
Wait a minute. That's the metaphor alert. The metaphor alert.
Yeah, metaphor alert. We should probably have like a red flag that flashes out across or something. But we use different tools. Those are the facts.
Absolutely. So it is. We if you haven't listened to those 2 episodes, we've got a number of episodes at personalpensionradio.com. Subscribe on iTunes, but definitely check out the last 2 podcasts that we've done where we talk about the differences with going up the mountain, also known as the accumulation or the savings phase of our retirement plan. This is the part where we're actually saving. And in the following episode, episode 10, we talked about the very specific rules, which are quite different, for coming down the mountain or distributing money from our accounts.
Craig, I was talking with the physician the other day about this very issue and actually specifically talking about surgery.
Okay.
And I was playing a little bit dumb and asking, hey, what is it that you use to, you make the incision? It's called a scalpel. And he says, yeah, that's it. It's a scalpel. That's what we use. And I said, well, when you start a surgery, you have the scalpel on the table. Do you have all the necessary tools and equipment that you'll need to finish the surgery, meaning to close the patient up, the sutures? And, oh, yeah, of course you would have all those things there. Again, metaphor alert. That's
right.
What we're doing. We have all the pieces on the table when you start your planning or when you're planning for retirement, again, income in retirement, you have all those pieces there. And you start, if you're going to start a surgery, you begin with the end in mind. Hey, at some point I'm going to close this patient up. I'm going to need those tools.
Right, and what we're finding right now with the retirement income crisis in America today is that, unfortunately, far too many people are getting to retirement and finding out they do not have all the right instruments in their plans. They don't have the right tools, the right financial vehicles necessary to achieve the outcome that they were hoping for.
Yeah, I'm hoping that my surgeon, if I need surgery, is going to have those tools there, those sutures, and that he's not looking for a roll of tape.
Duct tape. Duct tape's the answer, Mark. That's it.
To put me back together.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of what I'm afraid that's what the federal government is going to be looking at with Social Security and pension crisis and everything else happening in America, that they're going to be whipping out the big roll of duct tape. The problem is...
Maybe we can call it the MacGyver plan. The old ways, we have to MacGyver our way to...
That's right. That's right. The MacGyver plan. We just need a Swiss Army knife and everything else will be fine.
That's right.
Well, you know what? Let's do this. I want to actually I want to go to a section that we call Watch Your Step. It's a Watch Your Step. Make sure that you don't step in some random item that you didn't know about, that as you are planning for retirement, that you're working on that exit. Someday, as I would say, getting off the work ship, that you want to actually exit and retire. And you want to make sure that you watch your step along the way. So there's a section that we will include in our podcast now and then called Expert, quote, if you could throw up the air quotes, expert advice to avoid. And this actually came from a fairly well-known certified financial planner. And there was a question that came in on this particular show. And the question was, should I pay cash for a car? Should I pay cash for a car? Now, I know Mark's already laughing. So, number one, we understand as financial professionals that the answer is not specifically yay or nay. It's not cut and dry. But for this certified financial planner, the answer was very cut and dry. It was absolutely, you should always pay cash for your car. And Mark, you and I both know that that is not the answer in every situation.
Well, the initial idea is that cash is king, and that's a great way to pay for things. But certainly it is not the most efficient way to pay for things. And lost efficiency over time can have a huge impact, if not unrecoverable type impact on our retirement assets.
Right. And in a case of, for example, buying a car or actually paying for just about anything, most of the argument comes from paying cash or buying it on credit. And what most people fail to realize until we really stop and think about it, that no matter what we do, whether we paid cash for the car or whether we financed it, we always finance it. We're always financing it. And people will stop and say, and then they'll say, no. If I don't go get a loan, I didn't finance the car. But let's just use you as an example, Mark. So you have a car, for example, right now. It's a nice car. Is that going to be the last car that you ever buy in your life? No. You might buy another 2 or 3 cars over your lifetime, right?
Absolutely.
So if you are going to pay cash for your next car, what do you have to do in order to be prepared for the next car?
I have to put that cash away. I have to save for it.
So you essentially have to self-finance the car. You have to sacrifice current enjoyment of a certain amount of money every month or year to be prepared to hand that money over to buy the next car, right?
That is correct.
So no matter what we do, we're going to finance the car, whether we finance it ourselves out of our lifestyle or if we finance it from a bank.
You're right.
So when someone calls in to ask me, for example, should I pay cash for a car? Well, there's so many other factors involved. And in this particular case, it was just a cut and dry, absolutely you should. But just to throw out a quick word of caution as you're out there listening to this, think about this. If you put $30,000 cash on a car, that $30,000 is not yours anymore unless you sell your car, right? And as soon as you put the $30,000 into that car, what happens to that money?
It's gone.
Well, it depreciates as well, right? So you might lose an extra.
Yeah, the car does.
Yeah, you might lose an extra.
Your savings account.
Yeah, it's not a very good savings account. The car isn't. So you might lose an extra 10 or 15% immediately putting it into the car, right?
That's correct.
So in today's world right now with these crazy low interest rates where we can almost get money for free, and we think about going to get a loan for a car perhaps at 4%, and we put it into the bank instead of putting it into the car, well, that might not work, but maybe there's an investment or a business opportunity that we could put that money to work somewhere else. And is it possible that we could actually earn more than 4% over the life of that car?
Well, and again, it's and we could probably do a whole podcast on this. It's just the discovery process of understanding, is that the most efficient way to purchase whatever it is you're purchasing, a car,
exactly.
Real estate, whatever it may be. Is there a more efficient way to purchase whatever it is that we want to purchase? Exactly. And is there a way that we can do what others do who lend money out and reap the benefits of that opportunity? I mean, that's all I'll say. A teaser of another podcast that we can go into efficient ways to use our own money and to do things. But needless to say, there's a more efficient way than paying cash.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And paying cash or credit is not the end of the discussion. There's so much more into it. I appreciate that insight, Mark. That's fantastic. Let's move into this next segment. We call this news to watch, news that you need to be aware of out there that the mainstream press is not sharing this, but it is going to have and is already having a huge impact on the future retirement in America. And there's an article actually just really quick that I wanted to cover before we get to the primary article from that we were talking about, Mark. And it was an article that was actually published by the American Society of Pension Professionals and Actuaries. That actually sounds like a really smart organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, they probably are a lot of fun at parties.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun at parties, I tell you. So the American Society of Pension Professionals and Actuaries, they actually published a response to something we spoke of on one of our recent podcasts, which was President Obama's budget plan to put a limit, a cap, on the amount of money that you can put into 401ks and IRA type accounts. And this was a very interesting bit of calculation that was done by these folks who are pension and retirement account experts. This is an entire society of pension and retirement account experts. And
this is their focus.
What's that?
That's their focus. That's all they do.
That's all they do. And what they pointed out was a very interesting fact that if President Obama was to be compared, so if you look at President Obama's retirement account through his government program, his government pension retirement account, and compare that to what he is suggesting in his budget. So it was really interesting. Here's what they came up with. So President Obama, just to recap, suggesting that you should not be able to put in more than $3 million into a 401k, or that you should not be able to have more than $3 million in a 401k, right?
Right.
But when they do the math on President Obama's own pension plan, based on just reasonable assumptions, his own personal retirement plan account would be worth $5 million. Well,
that seems fair.
That seems completely fair, that his own personal account would be worth $2 million more than what he is suggesting for average Americans who, if they are saving for retirement, might actually have a chance of saving that kind of money someday. Interesting.
Right. And then when you factored on that the average American's not going to get anywhere near cap, and that's the slippery slope that we begin to get into. But and that the idea that he wants to, his proposal is to cap the American people, but of course his is going to be worth somewhere in the neighborhoods of $5 million. That's a number he's not releasing. No,
he's not going to release that. It takes a society of actuarial and pension and retirement account geeks, and geeks being a total compliment. If you ever hear me say the word geek, it is an absolute compliment because geeks rule the world. Okay, so...
Well, it really plays well into the next article, Kraig, which is what most Americans, they would want that. They would
absolutely
want the same luxury that President Obama is going to have.
Right, and so what the article that Mark is referencing, this is another one of those articles that the mainstream press is just not picking up. This is an article actually written in the Employee Benefit Advisor magazine. The Employee Benefit Advisor is another financial industry organization focused on employee benefits, namely retirement income benefits.
Well, and this article was put out by the National Institute on Retirement Security. Again, an educational think tank with some of the country's brightest minds focused. None of them are industry people, meaning that they're not investment folks. These are industry educators on what's happening in the United States today.
Right. And they had the heading, just so you know, we'll have all of this in the show notes. And if you want a copy of these articles, if you want a link to these articles, go over to personalpensionradio.com or our actual sponsor site, personalpensionformulation.com, and just give us send us an email, and we'll send you a link to any of this information. It'll also be in the show notes. But now,
as well as you'll be able to download our free report from there.
Oh, that's a good reminder, everybody. We've got Mark and I actually wrote a retirement income crisis report. You've got to get that. That is really one of the best first steps as you're preparing to get yourself on track for retirement. Great reminder, Mark. So this article, the title of the article is "Workers Willing to Give Up Raises in Exchange for Secure Retirement Income." That's huge.
Yeah. It's very telling.
Yeah, the survey was that 72% of Americans viewed retirement benefits as a perk that was almost as important as their salary.
Yeah, and 2/3 of Americans, 67%, would be willing to give up salary increases in exchange, here's a biggie, for guaranteed retirement income.
That's the key.
Amazing.
Right? So is it about the size of our 401k balance? Is it about what is our rate of return every year? No. What are folks wanting as they're looking towards retirement? Guaranteed income. That's amazing. You had some other observations here, Mark, I think that you and I were talking about before we got on the air.
Well, it's just that the numbers are they're staggering. 82% of those surveyed said that a pension is worth having because it provides steady income that won't run out, and again, 67% will take less income now today. And pretty much all of them said that, hey, we're in a retirement income crisis in America.
Oh, yeah. It was a huge percentage of, people get it. They understand that there's a problem, no doubt. And
yeah.
As a matter of fact, they actually go into some additional detail. This society that did the report, they calculated the U.S. retirement savings deficit.
Yes.
Now, if you're listening to this show, you know we don't want to always be negative. We want you to know that there is an answer to this, that there is a solution, that when you hear these numbers, you don't have to lay down and just give up. You don't have to say, there's no way that I'm going to ever make it out of this. There is a way, and that's what we specialize in. So when we share this, what we're hoping that you'll be inspired, motivated, you'll be fired up to say, no, that is not going to happen to me. Because when you look at this number, and it says the U.S. retirement savings deficit is at least $6.8 trillion. Meaning that people are that far behind with their retirement savings. When you look at that number, it's easy to give up, right, Mark?
That's right. But the survey said that they're willing to forego some current enjoyment of their money, meaning they're really willing to give up salary increases in order for them to have this pension-like income. In fact, later on in the article, it says more than 8 out of 10. So that means between 8 and 10 or 9, or at least a vast majority said that all workers, not just public employees and the police officer, the teacher, the federal employees, should have a pension.
Right.
8 out of 10 should. They're agreeing that 8 out of 10 should have a pension. By the way, those are not those the pre-1978 numbers?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's quite amazing. And they also said, later on we can get into this, but they also said that they would be willing to save more. Even on top of giving up, they'd save 1 to 4% more, 1 to 4% more to accomplish the attainable retirement assets amount.
Right, and they'd be willing to save more if they had some guarantee of the income number at the end.
That's
hard
right.
Right. The hard part was saving more money, especially with folks who have had the experience of the 2000s, the 2008s, is that they might have saved, and then the stock market and the world economy took it away overnight, and it gets very discouraging. Mark and I are here to tell you that there is a way to do this right. Remember,
that's right.
If you go ahead.
If you're sitting in your car and you're saying to yourself, you know what, I agree with this. I would love to be able to save today and create, when I retire, this pension-like income that would give me that peace of mind and that guaranteed income stream in life. If that's what you're thinking in your mind, I would like this, then you really need to go to personalpensionformulation.com, garner the free report, but then get in contact with us. We will teach you and can teach you how to create those pension-like incomes in retirement.
Yeah, that's a great way to lead into the next piece in our final segment, Mark, which is learners will inherit the earth, taken from a quote by Eric Hoffer. He's an author and a lecturer, and Eric Hoffer said, "In times of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists." Always got to be learning, right? If you're not learning, the world is just passing you by, and you end up being part of that crowd that wasn't prepared. We're here to make sure that you are prepared, and we want to talk today about a very important topic, and we call this the two financial powers. And maybe, Mark, you can set this up for us, kind of give us an intro to this.
Well, everyone has one financial power that most people that are aware of, and let's use it in the context of our own retirement plans and what we've been talking about in the past. And when we were talking about the upside of the mountain, the accumulation phase of our lives, the metaphor again, going up the mountain, we were specifically talking about and identifying one of the financial powers that we have, and that is interest rate of return. The ability to
that's again, you're suggesting that this is the power that goes with us as we are saving for retirement in our family years. We're building towards the top of the mountain.
That's correct. And so that power is called interest rate of return. When you put money, in a bank, you put money in the market, you put money in an investment, that's the power that comes along with that investment, and it's called the interest rate of return power.
And that's the one that's the one that most everybody is familiar with. That's the one that we hear. We hear that on television commercials. What's your number? We hear financial entertainers like Dave Ramsey talking about rate of return and averages, and banks quoting interest rates, right?
That's correct.
Now,
so back in go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say but that is what we are currently experiencing. What most people are familiar with is just that one power. But you and I both know that back 35 to 40 years ago, there was another financial power on the block, if you will.
Well, that's a great lead into the story of what happened back in 1978, and this article that we just spoke about kind of touches on it a little bit of what Americans were looking for. It's what Americans had back before that, and that is this pension-like income, this guaranteed income stream for life. And then back in 1978, there was this big switch. A very smart guy decides, how can I, in our company, get away from having to fund these pensions? What is it that I can do to get away from that funding?
Exactly.
And you know what happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Happened, right?
In 1978, the Congress put the 401k and qualified plan laws into effect. And like you said, eventually someone, a smart financial advisor, found that section of the code and created the first 401k plan. And from there, the 401k plan grew and grew and grew. And eventually we lost any marketing or knowledge about the second financial power, which we...
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Craig, let me ask you a question. Who bears the risk of accumulation and distribution in a defined benefit pension plan? Is it the employer or the employee?
Well, we've got to make sure to do the definition police here for our listeners. So a defined benefit pension plan is one where you work and work and work, and you know, based on a particular formula, how much your paycheck, your pension will be. So to your question, who bears the risk of that income check on a defined benefit plan, a pension? Then the answer would be the employer, right? The employer has to guarantee that benefit.
That's right. And they likely give up, the employee likely gives up some salary opportunity to be covered by a plan like that. Is that not fair? That
Absolutely. You know,
people not making as much.
Right. No, people who have a pension generally agree to get paid less today in exchange for a guaranteed paycheck in the future. And the employer is on the hook for that defined benefit guarantee.
And that's exactly what the article was talking about, was it not?
Yes, that want that guaranteed paycheck.
That's exactly, and they were willing to give up some salary to be able to get that guaranteed paycheck.
Absolutely.
So here's the next question: who bears the risk of accumulation and distribution in a defined contribution plan or a 401k?
Right. Okay. So the 401k
the employer
is
or the employee.
Right. Who bears the risk? That's an easy one. That's the employee, because in a defined contribution plan like a 401k, the only thing that the employer has promised in not in all cases, but in cases where they perhaps give a matching contribution or something like that, the only thing the employer has promised maybe is a particular match, but they have no promise or commitment with the benefit at the end. So the employee bears all the risk on a defined contribution plan.
So two major things happened when we made this shift from the defined benefit or pension plans over to the defined contribution or 401k plans back in the late 70s, early 80s. Two major things happened. First of all, there was this major shift of risk away from the employer over to the employee. That's number one.
Right. Now that should be stressed, though. This risk, right, when you had a defined benefit plan, you were on the hook as the employer for paying out that guaranteed income. You took the investment risk. You took the responsibility. So when we shifted to defined contribution plans like 401k, that all falls back on the employee. All that risk, all that responsibility.
That's correct. For accumulation and distribution.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
Right? The second thing is there's been very little education on what an employee should do about accumulation and distribution. In fact, most of the education in today's world is all about accumulation.
Oh, agreed.
Is that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, We're only talking about climbing mountains. We're not talking about how to get back down.
Yeah, the conversations about pensions and such are virtually non-existent unless you're a government employee.
So here we have all these employees who now have these 401ks. We're just meeting with a client the other day with their 401k, and they were as confused as ever on what to do. They had no idea. They had read some things that had been given to them, but they have no idea on what to do and what they're facing in the future. So it's an actual truism that they are getting very little education on how to position themselves for the eventual reality of distribution income.
No, it's so true. And someone asked me once, Mark, and I've been asked this more than once actually, that why isn't there more information, education, marketing out there about retirement income planning? And my answer has been and continues to be a response with a question. So, does Wall Street have any financial incentive to teach us how to take our money out of the system?
No.
No, of course not. So it's not insidious, it's not evil, it's nothing bad. It's just there's no financial incentive for Wall Street to spend money teaching us how to take money out of their system. So if they largely control the message, we're not going to hear about income, we're not going to hear about distribution, or at least very little.
I totally agree. Well, another interesting thing happened back in the day when this huge switch from the employer to the employee and the risk that came along with that and the very little education that they received, they also lost one of their financial powers that perhaps many were not even aware that they had. They just got it by default in their defined benefit pension plans.
Right. It was about 67 to 70% of American workers were covered by a company pension or a government pension of some kind, a defined benefit plan. The large majority of American workers were covered by that kind of a plan.
And within that plan, in the defined benefit plan, there were two financial powers that were used to produce the results for that employee. Is that correct?
Exactly. We had the interest rate of return, which was managed by professional investment managers, professional corporations, and backed up by employers, right?
That's correct. And then you had a second power that, again, most people probably didn't even realize that they had, and it's the power of actuarial science.
Now, that is one big word, and it might make my head start to hurt if you don't explain what actuarial science is.
Well, actuarial science it assesses the risks. So it's looking and assessing the risk and probabilities of uncertain future events and how, from a standpoint of probabilities, will money or people react to those events.
Gotcha. And the most common place that we see actuarial science applied is in the area of mortality. The life
That's
insurance
correct.
industry, the pension industry. The most uncertain event, if you will, is how long human beings will live. And
that's what they used the data for. They were able to assess the mortality based on the pool that they were providing the income for. They made a mortality assumption within that pool of people, and that mortality assumption allowed for them to make income payments to their recipients of the pension for their lifetime.
Exactly. So actuarial science, folks, not something you should be afraid of, something you should absolutely learn about. Get on over again, personalpensionformulation.com. Contact us directly to ask questions, to understand it, because without these two financial powers together, we're really relegated to the risks, the ups and downs of assets in the stock market and real estate market, and we are completely relegated to very limited, undesirable retirement income options.
Well, they were meant to be together, Craig. The irony, I guess, of the whole situation is that either power by itself is equally ineffective. So
Agreed.
The interest rate of return power or the actuarial science power separately are ineffective. But together, when they're put together and used in the way that they were intended to be used, they become a powerful tool to retirement income.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. That is exactly right. And our mission, one of our calls to action, our missions is to help people understand how to bring that balance, how to bring actuarial science and actuarial assets back into your retirement savings strategy. I use that word so that you can hear the word very clearly, strategy. Mark said it just a moment ago. A product will not get you there. There is no one product that will help you achieve maximum retirement income.
Another way to talk about it is it's a distribution asset. You have
great.
You have to have accumulation assets and distribution assets working together to create the highest opportunity for lifetime income.
Now, that's an excellent way to put it. So, folks, if you're out there listening to this and you've talked to a financial advisor who says that the solution to your retirement dilemma is that you should buy a different accumulation product, well, that's exactly the opposite of what we're teaching here, that you've got to have the accumulation assets working in conjunction with distribution assets. They're two very specific things that need to work together.
Creates the highest amount of income in retirement, also creates that opportunity for pension-like income in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I think any closing thoughts on this, Mark? Because I think that is a great place to end it. Really, with that call to action to say again, don't get stuck with these numbers. Don't be disappointed. I would make it clear that we're saying you can do this, but even more so, let me be more blunt. There's going to be a lot of people who are not going to get up and save, plan, and get ready correctly. And if you're not one of those folks that is well planned, you might be one of those folks who is paying for someone who wasn't well planned. Right, Mark?
Yeah, that's right. I want everyone to go away, and really the purpose of everything that we're doing is you can do this, you can make it, you can start where you are and still have an opportunity to make it in your retirement, no matter how old you are. There are ways to be able to make this happen. So go in with confidence. Visit personalpensionformulation.com. Get the free report, but more importantly, get in contact with us. And frankly, and Craig and I have talked about this, having a full podcast just on your questions. So if you just have a question and you want to ask that question, ask us via email, and we'll gladly answer it on a podcast or directly with you.
Yeah, that's a great thing. We're going to be collecting those in the comments and then feedback from the website, so please do that. Mark, thanks again for being here with us. Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio podcast. We will be back again next week with another episode fresh and ready for you.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you are there, we would appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.